From the mountainous ancient kingdom of Wallachia, in what is now modern Romania, a man emerged who would excel himself in devising innovative methods of torture and mass murder.
He had power of life and death over all of his subjects.
He inspired a marvelous horror story, and it's an unusual horror story in that it was real.
In a bloody 6-year reign, the ruler of this kingdom brought terror to citizens and foreigners alike. Prince Vlad Dracula was more than just the inspiration for the bloodthirsty vampire of legend. To this day, he's still referred to as Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, in memory of his favorite method of killing. From his birth in 1431, Vlad's home of Wallachia was racked with instability and unrest.
Wallachia in the 15th century was a small and backward principality. It faced two great powers, the Ottoman Empire to the south of the Danube, and then the Kingdom of Hungary to the west. So the scene was set for a conflict between the two great powers, and it was in between these powers that the story of Vlad unfolds.
As son of the Prince of Wallachia, Vlad was initiated into the Christian Order of the Dragon, a select group of European royalty dedicated to crusading against the infidel Turks and defending an empire in the name of the cross.
The Ottoman Turks, they were the most successful fighters for Islam in the 15th century. Nobody could rival them in terms of spreading the religion.
As head of the order, his father was known as Dracul, meaning the dragon.
Vlad was very proud of the fact that his father got this very select honor. So he called himself Dracula, which means son of him who had the Order of the Dragon.
In 1442, the Turkish invasion of Transylvania left Wallachia vulnerable to its Hungarian enemies. With his throne under threat, Vlad's father made a deal with the Ottoman Sultan.
Wallachia went through a series of rulers rather rapidly, and it was in the interests of the Ottoman Sultan to keep them under control. They didn't try to overrun and conquer the land. They tried instead to extract tribute from the Wallachs and to demand troops from them if they needed them for their army.
To seal the deal, Vlad's father sent his 2 young sons as tribute to the Sultan in Adrianople, right into the lion's den.
You had to leave an insurance policy. And the best insurance in this case was to leave your 2 sons on the premise that you wouldn't dare go to war and risk the lives of your sons. But as a matter of fact, the father did and knew what he was doing. We have a letter from the father to the citizens of the town in Transylvania saying, "How can you doubt my convictions? I've sacrificed my own sons in the Christian cause."
Vlad was 13 and a hostage in a strange land.
You have to think about this for a moment. Look, you're a young boy, your father leaves you, you're bereft of your mother, mother goes back with the father. You're among these Turks. You don't know Turkish. You don't know Islam. You're a Christian. I mean, it's a strange place, this weird religion.
It definitely has affected him as a teenager. It could not have not affected his way of thinking. He had this hatred very much imprinted in him and this desire of revenge.
Vlad's growing sense of abandonment and betrayal spawned a severe hatred for the Sultan and his court. The Sultan's eye was fixed firmly on Vlad and Radu as potential puppet rulers, They were being primed to take their native throne in the name of Islam. But Vlad was studying the enemy and biding his time.
The most important thing was probably military, and I suspect that Vlad and Radu would have had a good military training in the Ottoman court. They would learn about warfare, particularly riding, how to fire a bow, swordsmanship, because being a member of the ruling class, which is what they were destined to become, meant also that you had to fight on the battlefield, and indeed you had to lead armies. And having learnt that, then they would have to learn the rudiments of Islam.
It was here that Vlad witnessed the fear-inducing effect of public execution.
Generally, executions were fairly public, because the whole purpose of them was to show the power of the Sultan and also to encourage people not to step out of line.
Unlike Vlad, Radu had become fully indoctrinated into Ottoman culture and its army.
His younger brother has given in to the Sultan and gone over to the Sultan and becomes a minion, a puppet. Vlad's motive primarily is to stop Islam and to maintain the independence as far as he could of his native Wallachia. He wanted to be ruler.
His brother really accepted the Turkish way of life. He wasn't interested in war. Radu was not. He was interested in just being a prince and being pampered and leading the easy life. For Vlad, that was unthinkable. He had a fight, he had a motive, he was driven, and this was not something he could accept. So the relationship between him and his brother was terrible.
To Vlad, Radu was a traitor, never to be trusted again. In 1448, Vlad's father was murdered by the power-hungry Wallachian nobility in a plot to take the throne. After 6 long years in exile, Vlad's chance to rule had finally come. The Turks raised their army and put Vlad at the helm. He was to be the Sultan's new prince of Wallachia. But within 3 years, Vlad had turned on the Sultan and had thrown him out of what was now his realm. Barely 25 years old, Prince Vlad Dracula began his infamous and bloody reign.
He came back to a country that was unstable. He had no idea who was for him, who was against him, who would help him, who would defy him.
At first it appears he was a popular ruler because he seemed to be independent, which was something they hadn't seen in a long time.
Once in power, Prince Vlad increased security by building thick battlements, watchtowers, and underground tunnels.
Vlad Tepes really changed the way Wallachia looked by building a whole set of new fortresses, of using new key points that he reinforced.
He knew he was on the brink of war with the Turks, that was clear. He was preparing then his country.
To the new prince, Wallachia was now a war state. Once prevention of foreign attack was completed, he turned to ensuring the loyalty of the nobility.
He assembles all the boyars, the nobles, to a great feast, and he wined and dined them. Ironically asked them how many rulers they had seen in their lifetime, and some of them mentioned 12, a large number of princes who had been on that throne. And what did this show to him? That they had no respect for the prince. And then afterwards, when they little suspected it, he had the place surrounded. He took them on a death march to his mountain lair, Castle Dracula at Poyenar.
And made them work side by side, elbow to elbow with the peasants to rebuild and reinforce the Poyenari castle.
And many of them fell from the rock, it's a 1,000-foot drop on all sides. It's a precarious sort of place. Many died from exhaustion and from lack of proper nourishment, but soon turned from being, let's say, a man who was apparently at first relatively popular to someone who was feared.
To ensure absolute loyalty, Prince Vlad employed a terror tactic he witnessed as a boy in Adrianople: impalement.
The classic way of impaling is to take the victim, put them spread eagle on the ground, tie the arms to one set of horses and the legs to another. Then you take a stake. What happens is the horses move slowly forwards, then the ropes are cut, and then you're hoisted up on this stake or pole. You die very slowly, not from your innards being pierced, but from exposure to the elements generally. Purpose, a lasting example of what can happen to you if you disobey the rules. It's effective.
With his ancestral throne secure, Vlad would restructure the social hierarchy and install a strict moral code that would result in the slaughter of thousands of his own people. Having established himself as sole sovereign, and with his court cleansed of disloyal noblemen, Vlad turned to restructuring the gentry to create a new nobility, loyal only to him.
He got rid of most of the old gentry. There's a noticeable drop in the old families during his reign. What did he do? He replaced them with lower gentry, who'd be beholden to him and more loyal, more trustworthy. And those are the ones he used to carry out his terror tactics of impalement.
With his henchmen in place, Vlad's obsession with loyalty and control led him to install a severe moral code, punishable only by death.
He was an extreme law and order man, and all the chronicles testify that during his lifetime there was law and order in Wallachia. He would punish you by impalement for little offenses as well as big ones. If a woman committed adultery, he had her body skinned and then exposed on the village square as a lesson to adulterous wives. Or if a woman was lazy, he'd have her hands cut off and impaled on the village square as a lesson to lazy wives. And he impaled the old people and the children because they were useless.
Naturally, the fear of his wrath kept rebellion down to a minimum. According to peasant tradition, Vlad placed a priceless gold cup in every village square for all the peasantry to admire. Many drank from it, but no one dared steal it. The cup remained in the square throughout Vlad's entire reign as a symbol of his absolute power.
What he wanted to do was to establish the fact that he was the absolute ruler, and what better absolute ruler is it than to be godlike? That's what it's all about. God has the power of life and death, and it's indiscriminate, let's face it. That's the essence of terror.
Before long, execution was not only administered as a punishment, but became the prince's favorite pastime. Vlad would kill at a whim.
Vlad liked to dine amid his impaled victims in his local city, and the stench must have been unbearable throughout the place. He would have the blood gathered in bowls in front of him, and he took bread, dipped it in the blood of his victims, and slurped it down. In fact, one case, a Polish nobleman held his nose. He was there, having dinner with Vlad. And Vlad turned to him and said, "What's the matter with you?" And the fellow said, "My lord, I can't stand the stench of these rotting corpses all around." He said, "Very well, I'll take care of that." And then he had this fellow impaled on a higher stake than the others, and he said, well, now he's up there where the gentle breezes blow, and he doesn't have to worry about the stench down here anymore.
People always gathered to watch public executions, so when he did that, he had it refined to a point of perfection.
This perverted approach to law and order took the lives of thousands of his fellow Christian citizens and turned the royal capital into a stinking graveyard.
Vlad's palace at Tirgovishte was surrounded by a high hedge 3 miles in length. There was a corpse hanging from every branch, and as soon as somebody came and cut down a corpse, a fresh corpse was put there in its place. And that is one of the reasons why, indeed, in Turkish, Vlad has the title Kazakçı Vlad, or Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad was an Orthodox Christian with a growing reputation as a sadist and a monstrous appetite for revenge. But as long as he fought against the Ottoman Turks, he was accepted in the Catholic center of Christendom.
Vlad Dracula was the one who fought and tried to stop the spread of Islam into his own area. And he was supported by the Pope. The Orthodox signed with the Catholics, and they formed one church on paper, which shows you that the theological differences were peanuts. It didn't mean anything to the Pope. This guy was Orthodox Christian. Who cares? He's fighting the Turks.
In 1462, the Sultan Mehmed was on the warpath. The Wallachian border was lined with Vlad and his army, determined to keep the Turkish enemy out.
Mehmed's army was much bigger than Vlad's and much better equipped with cannon and a huge amount of cavalry. The first obstacle that he encountered was, of course, the river Danube, with Vlad drawn up on the northern bank, just ready to chop his army to pieces as it scrambled up the banks. They advanced slowly and drove Vlad back using their guns. They lost 250 men in this operation.
The Sultan sent 2 ambassadors to see Vlad, to negotiate possible settlement. Vlad asked them to remove their caps in his presence, and they said, "Lord, it is our custom never to bare our heads to any person." He said, "Very well, I will confirm you in your custom." So he had his soldiers come out, and they took very small nails, and they nailed these caps to the heads of these ambassadors. And then Vlad said, "When you come to visit a great ruler such as myself, you better go along with my customs. Go back and tell the Sultan what you have seen." And they did. And the Sultan was enraged and wanted vengeance.
With an army 3 times the size of Vlad's, the Sultan advanced and forced Vlad into retreat.
Vlad wheeled his forces around, started destroying everything in his path, marched across the Danube and destroyed villages on both sides of the Danube, which means he destroyed his own Romanian villages too.
Vlad burned food stores and poisoned wells to slow the invading army.
Scorched earth. Brilliant policy. Very, very cruel, but they say an army travels on its stomach. This was especially true in the 15th century. They lived off the land. Well, if you create scorched earth, there's no food around.
Vlad the Impaler raced back to the capital and with sadistic delight watched the invading army approach.
A first wave of Turkish came through, crossed the border, and it came into Romania. He won that battle, took all the corpses and the wounded and the prisoners, and had a whole forest of sticks brought up in this big open field. And when the second wave came with the main army, they just stopped dead on their tracks. And so this forest of bleeding, agonizing bodies on sticks. And it was just a big, huge forest of dead bodies.
20,000, over 23,000 some odd. It was a deliberate attempt to frighten the Sultan. And when the Sultan saw this, he said, "What can you do against a man who does such terrible things?"
It was just so barbarous, so atrocious that even for them, they couldn't stand it. They just turned around and fled.
His brother Radu was the only man ambitious enough to cross this barricade of death and follow the Impaler prince all the way to his mountain retreat.
Sultan sent a small contingent on ahead to pursue Vlad to Castle Dracula, Pojenar.
Led, of course, somewhere from behind probably by his little brother. He had been promised by the Turks that he would be the ruling prince of Romania once they defeated his older brother.
He was trapped at this Castle Dracula. I mean, he was no longer capable of mounting any campaign against the Turks. And they besieged the place, and Vlad then escaped with the help of some gypsies, actually, through a tunnel, and had his horses shod backwards, shoes backwards, to confuse pursuit, and escaped over Figurash into Transylvania. Amazing.
Vlad the Impaler had repelled the massive Turkish army and escaped, outwitting his brother Radu, only to be captured by his other enemy, the Hungarian king. Vlad's blood-stained throne was filled by his hated brother.
When they got rid of Dracula, they put this puppet on the throne, Radu the Handsome, who was, after all, a native Wallachian, okay, but he was also a pawn of the Turks.
Almost 12 years after his capture, Vlad was released. With the Hungarian borders under threat from the advancing Turks, Vlad united with the king in the fight against the common enemy. Vlad was finally on his way home. Soon after Radu's death in 1475, Vlad the Impaler reclaimed his place as Prince of Wallachia. Still mourning the bloodbath of his past atrocities, the citizens could only see death and destruction in their future. Within 2 months of his ill-fated reign, Vlad's decapitated body was found in a murky bog, just miles from the capital. According to peasant tradition, in the final battle against his Turkish enemy, Vlad was murdered by the Sultan's hired assassin.
His head was cut off, encased in honey to keep it in good shape, and sent to the Sultan as proof that Kaziklo Voyevoda, the impaling prince, was finally dead.
Vlad's severed head was presented on a high stake for the crowd to witness that the great impaler had himself been impaled. As the bloodthirsty murderer of some 100,000 people, Vlad the Impaler would be immortalized as the infamous vampire Dracula, whose legend continues to evoke fear in the hearts of all that know of him.
We're heading out to the battlefield after the break to learn about the terrifying challenges facing medics during the Battle of the Somme.